When God places his hand upon a person and calls them his chosen, it is not by mistake, it is not by chance, and it is never without meaning. To be chosen is to carry a weight that others may not understand, a burden that may feel heavy but also holy. Some of you listening right now have felt this stirring deep within your soul. You have sensed that your life cannot simply be lived like everyone else's. You have seen doors close that others walk through easily. You have faced storms that others never even saw coming. And you may have wondered, why me? Why does it feel like my life is marked in a different way? My friend, that is because you are chosen. And with being chosen comes both responsibility and destiny. God never calls a person without a purpose. When he marked you, he was saying, there is something in this world that only you can carry, something only you can deliver, something only you can reflect of my glory. This is why the weight feels different on your shoulders. This is why the battles feel fiercer, why the temptations come stronger, why the attacks feel more personal. It is because the enemy recognizes what is inside of you even before you fully do. The devil never wastes his time fighting people who have no threat to him. The fact that you are in the battle is already proof that you are carrying something worth fighting for. But hear me carefully, being chosen is not just about privilege. It is about accountability. It is not just about being favored. It is about being faithful. When God sets his eyes on you, he is not just giving you blessings, he is entrusting you with a mission. That mission might be to raise a family that stands for righteousness in a world collapsing in sin. That mission might be to speak truth where lies have become the language of the culture. That mission might be to live with such integrity and courage that others who are drowning in compromise suddenly see a light of hope through you. Whatever the assignment, being chosen means you cannot live as if your life belongs only to you. The chosen walk a narrower road. Jesus said the gate is narrow and few find it. The chosen cannot simply follow the crowd because their destiny is not in the crowd. The chosen cannot live for applause because their calling is not to be popular, it is to be faithful. The chosen cannot sleep while the world is burning because God has placed in their hearts a fire that refuses to be silent. And I tell you this in love, if you are chosen, running away from your calling will never bring you peace. You can try to hide in the pleasures of the world. You can try to bury yourself in distractions. But that inner voice of God will still whisper, I called you. I set you apart. You are mine. This weight of being chosen is not meant to crush you. It is meant to shape you. God uses the pressure to refine you. He uses the storms to strengthen you. He uses the loneliness to bring you closer to him. You may feel isolated, but you are not abandoned. You may feel overwhelmed, but you are not forsaken. When you are chosen, the hand of God goes with you even into the lion's den, even into the fiery furnace, even into the valley of the shadow of death. That is why you survive what others cannot. That is why doors open for you that should have stayed shut. That is why, even in your weakness, you find strength that cannot be explained. Some of you may be listening right now thinking, but I'm not strong enough for this. I don't have what it takes to be chosen. Let me remind you, God never chooses the qualified, he qualifies the chosen. Moses could not speak clearly, but God used him to confront Pharaoh. David was just a shepherd boy, but God used him to defeat giants. Esther was an orphan, but God placed her in a palace to save a nation. The very fact that you feel weak, the very fact that you feel unworthy is proof that God can use you, because his strength is made perfect in weakness. So if you are chosen, walk with courage. If you are chosen, stand firm even when the winds blow. If you are chosen, remember that your life carries more weight than you realize. Heaven is counting on you. Generations may be shaped by your obedience, and eternity itself may be impacted by the choices you make in this short time on earth. When God says you have 24 hours, he is not speaking in riddles. He is not speaking to entertain your curiosity. He is speaking to awaken you to the urgency of the moment. Too often we treat God's voice like a suggestion, as if obedience is optional, as if there will always be another day, another chance, another tomorrow. But the truth is, none of us are promised tomorrow. Every breath we take is mercy. Every sunrise we see is grace. And when God sets a time frame, it is because he knows how quickly hearts can harden, how swiftly opportunities can vanish, how fast the door can close. Think about the urgency of time. We count our lives in years, but God sometimes calls us to count our lives in moments. One decision in a single day can change the course of eternity. One act of obedience can set generations free. One refusal to act can cost blessings you may never see again. This is why the Word says, today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when it is more convenient. Today, there are people who say, when I am older, I will get serious about God. When I have more time, I will listen. When life slows down, I will obey. But life does not wait. The world does not slow down. And time never pauses for those who delay. How many opportunities have already slipped through your hands because you thought you had more time? How many times has God whispered to your heart, do this, go there, speak now, but you put it off? My friend, delayed obedience is disobedience. And when God says you have 24 hours, He is showing you the weight of the hour you are in right now. Consider Noah. He had a window of time to build the ark. Once the rain came, the chance to prepare was over. Consider Lot's family. They had to leave Sodom quickly because destruction was imminent. Hesitation cost dearly. When Jesus called His disciples, He did not say, follow me when you're ready. He said, follow me now. That urgency remains. God's timing is not about fear. It is about salvation. It is about saving you from destruction, protecting you from loss, and positioning you for blessings that are tied to obedience in the moment. The urgency of 24 hours is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you up, because many are asleep. They go through life as though there will always be another chance, another season, another open door. But when God speaks with urgency, He is saying, do not waste this moment. Do not treat lightly what I am offering you right now. Some of you have been given a word, a calling, an instruction, but you keep postponing it. And yet God has been patient. But patience is not permission to delay forever. There comes a time when waiting turns into missing out. Think about how differently you would live if you truly believed you had only 24 hours. You would not waste time on petty arguments. You would not chase meaningless distractions. You would not spend your energy trying to please people who do not even care for your soul. You would fall on your knees. You would forgive quickly. You would love deeply. You would worship with everything in you. And that is exactly the mindset God calls us to live with. Not in panic, but in urgency and readiness, in full awareness that time is precious and eternity is near. I believe God is speaking to some hearts right now, saying, this is your time. This is your moment. Do not put it off another day. Maybe it is the call to repent. Maybe it is the call to surrender. Maybe it is the call to step out in faith and obey an instruction that terrifies you. Whatever it is, you must understand that delayed action can cost more than you realize. When God says move, you must move. When He says speak, you must speak. When He says forgive, you must forgive. Because the blessing is not attached to your intention, it is attached to your obedience. You cannot treat eternity with casual indifference. Souls are at stake. Your destiny is at stake. And God's kingdom is waiting for your response. If you knew the clock was ticking, if you knew heaven's countdown was already underway, how would you respond? That is why God gives warnings like this. That is why He sets timelines. Not because He wants you to fear time running out, but because He wants you to recognize how valuable every moment is in His hands. So if you hear His voice today, do not harden your heart. Do not walk away saying, I will think about it tomorrow. Tomorrow may not come, and if it does, it may not carry the same opportunity that this moment does. Obey God while the door is open. Answer Him while He is calling. Because this 24 hours could be the turning point of your life. God is always speaking. The problem is never that His voice has gone silent. The problem is that our hearts have gone deaf. We live in a noisy world where everything demands our attention. Phones buzzing, voices shouting, distractions pulling us in 1,000 directions. And yet, in the midst of all this noise, God still speaks. He speaks through His Word. He speaks through His Spirit. He speaks through circumstances. He speaks through people. And sometimes He speaks through silence. The real question is not whether God is speaking. The real question is whether we are listening. When you open the Scriptures, you are not just reading ink on paper. You are hearing the voice of God. His Word is alive, sharper than any two-edged sword, able to cut into the deepest parts of your soul. That passage you read last week, the one that stirred something inside of you, that was not random. That was God speaking. When you felt conviction, when you felt encouragement, when you felt clarity, that was His Spirit breathing through His Word. Too many treat the Bible like a history book, but it is a living letter written to you from your Father. And if you want to hear his voice clearly, you must open it with expectation, not as a ritual, but as a conversation with the God who still speaks today. But God does not stop there. He also speaks to us through the inner voice of conscience that he has placed in every one of us. That still small voice, that gentle whisper that nudges you toward the right path, that convicts you when you drift, that comforts you when you are broken, that is his Spirit working within you. Elijah discovered this truth when he stood on the mountain. The Lord was not in the earthquake. He was not in the fire. He was not in the wind. He was in the whisper. And if you are not careful, you can miss that whisper in the chaos of your life. God is not always going to shout over your distractions. Sometimes he waits until you are still enough to hear him. God also speaks through circumstances. The door that closed, which you thought was a failure, but later you realized it protected you. That was his hand. The opportunity that came at just the right time. The provision that showed up when you had no hope. The storm that pushed you back onto your knees. Those were not coincidences. They were divine messages written in the language of life itself. You may not have recognized it then, but when you look back, you can see his fingerprints all over your story. And when you truly open your eyes, you realize he has been speaking all along. Sometimes God uses people to deliver his message. It might be a sermon that felt like it was written just for you. It might be a friend who spoke words they didn't even realize were exactly what you needed. It might even be a stranger whose words pierced your heart in a way you could not explain. God can speak through anyone he chooses, and often he does so to remind you that he sees you, he knows your situation, and he has not forgotten you. And yes, God even speaks through silence. Silence is not absence. Silence is sometimes the loudest voice of all. It is in the silence that God tests whether we are seeking him for his presence or just for his answers. In the silence, he teaches patience, he builds faith, he deepens trust. Just because you do not hear what you want to hear does not mean God is not speaking. Sometimes his silence is his way of saying, wait. Sometimes it is his way of saying, I am working behind the scenes. And sometimes it is his way of drawing you closer, teaching you to lean not on feelings, but on faith. The tragedy is that so many of us miss his voice because we expect it to sound a certain way. We expect lightning from heaven, an audible boom, a dramatic encounter. But God's voice is often subtle, gentle, woven into the very fabric of your everyday life. The danger is not that he isn't speaking. The danger is that you are so busy, so distracted, so consumed that you walk right past his voice. If you are chosen, you must tune your ears to the frequency of heaven. You must learn to pause in the chaos, to be still and know that he is God. You must develop a heart sensitive enough to catch his whisper in the noise. Because every instruction matters. Every word matters. One word from God can reroute your destiny. One whisper can save you from destruction. One moment of obedience can change your entire future. So today, ask yourself honestly, am I truly listening? Am I creating space for his word to speak? Or am I drowning it out with noise? Am I so stubborn that I ignore the nudges in my heart? Am I overlooking the messages written in my circumstances? Am I rushing past the silence instead of leaning into it? Because God is speaking right now in this very moment. And your future depends on whether you choose to hear him. When God speaks, it is never without purpose. His words are not wasted. They are not casual suggestions. They are not gentle ideas for you to consider at your convenience. When he speaks with eternal weight. To ignore his voice is not a small thing. It is not harmless. It is not without consequence. Ignoring the voice of God is one of the most dangerous choices a human being can make. Throughout history, the story repeats itself. God warns, but people turn away. God calls, but hearts grow stubborn. God speaks, but ears remain closed. And what follows is never blessing, it is always downfall. Think of the people in Noah's day. They heard the warning. They saw the ark being built. They laughed, they mocked, they ignored. But when the rain came and the floods rose, it was too late. The voice they had dismissed became the very judgment they could not escape. Think of Pharaoh in Egypt. He heard God's command again and again through Moses. But pride made him deaf. And what happened? Plagues fell, destruction came, and his own stubbornness cost him his nation. The danger of ignoring God's voice is that silence will not last forever. Sooner or later, His word will come to pass, whether you obey or not. The same truth applies today. Every time you hear God tugging at your heart and you say, "Not now," your heart grows a little harder. Every time you push away conviction, it becomes easier to ignore it the next time. The danger is not only in missing the blessing, the danger is in hardening yourself to the point that even when God shouts, you can no longer hear. That is why Scripture warns, do not harden your hearts, because a hardened heart is like a locked door, and when the door is shut, even light cannot enter. Ignoring God's voice does not just affect you, it affects everyone connected to you. A father who ignores God's call to lead his family leaves them vulnerable. A mother who ignores God's prompting to pray may miss the chance to protect her children spiritually. A leader who ignores God's guidance can lead an entire generation astray. This is why the stakes are so high. God's voice is never just about you. It is about those whose lives are tied to your obedience. But let us be honest, why do people ignore God's voice? Sometimes it is fear. Fear of what obedience might cost. Fear of losing friends, losing comfort, losing control. Sometimes it is pride. We think we know better. We think our plans are safer. Sometimes it is distraction. We are so busy with noise and activity that God's voice feels like an interruption. And sometimes it is simply rebellion. The heart doesn't want to change, so it pretends it cannot hear. But whatever the reason, the danger remains the same. Ignoring God's voice does not silence Him. It silences you. It cuts you off from the very source of wisdom and protection you desperately need. Think about it this way. A parent warns a child not to play in the street because danger is coming. If the child ignores the voice, the parent's warning does not create the danger, it only reveals it. In the same way, when God warns, it is not to scare you but to save you. His voice is not a burden, it is a lifeline. But when you cut yourself off from that voice, you step into danger unprotected. The very thing He was trying to keep you from becomes the very thing that consumes you. And here is the sobering truth: there are doors God will close forever if you refuse to walk through them when they are open. Opportunities tied to a season do not last forever. Blessings connected to obedience cannot be delayed endlessly. There comes a time when saying later becomes the same as saying never. And when that happens, the danger is not only what you lose, it is what you become. You become someone who can no longer recognize the sound of God's call. If you hear His voice today, do not take it lightly. Do not push it aside. Do not assume you will always have another chance. The danger of ignoring God's voice is not simply that you might miss a blessing. It is that you may miss your destiny. There is a blessing that follows obedience, a blessing that cannot be found anywhere else in this world. You see, obedience is not just about following a set of rules. It is about aligning your life with the will of God. It is about trusting Him enough to say, "Lord, I will do what you ask, even when I don't understand it, even when it costs me, even when it feels uncomfortable." And when you take that step of faith, when you surrender your will to His, something powerful happens. Heaven responds. All throughout Scripture, obedience has always been the turning point. When Abraham was told to leave his homeland and go to a place he had never seen, he obeyed, and through him the nations were blessed. When Noah obeyed the strange instruction to build an ark before rain had ever fallen, he and his family were saved. When the disciples left their nets at once and followed Jesus, their obedience opened the door to a calling that changed the entire world. The pattern is always the same: obedience unlocks blessing. But let us be clear, obedience is not always easy. In fact, obedience often requires you to go against your feelings, against your logic, even against the opinions of those around you. It can be costly. It may cost you relationships. It may cost you opportunities. It may cost you comfort. But whatever obedience costs you, it never costs more than disobedience. Because disobedience will cost you peace. It will cost you joy. It will cost you the very destiny God designed for you. Obedience may be hard in the moment, but it always leads to life. Some of you may be wrestling right now with a step God has asked you to take. Maybe He has told you to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. Maybe He has told you to let go of a relationship that is pulling you away from Him. Maybe He has been stirring your heart to step into ministry, to start something, to give something, to move in a direction that terrifies you. And you have hesitated because it doesn't make sense, because it feels too costly, because you are afraid of what others will say. But I tell you today, the blessing is waiting on the other side of your obedience. The breakthrough you have been praying for, the clarity you have been searching for, the peace you have been longing for, it is tied to the very thing God has been asking you to do. God does not ask for obedience to control you. He asks for obedience to bless you. His instructions are not to limit you, they are to free you. Just like a shepherd leading his sheep away from cliffs and predators, God leads you with his voice. If you obey, you walk in safety and blessing. If you resist, you expose yourself to danger. Every instruction of God is wrapped in his love. And though you may not understand it now, later you will look back and realize that every act of obedience was positioning you for something greater. Obedience also brings intimacy with God. Jesus said, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Obedience is not just about duty, it is about relationship. When you obey, you draw closer to his heart. When you obey, you show him that you trust him more than you trust yourself. And in return, he pours out his presence, his peace, his provision in ways you could never earn on your own. There is no greater blessing than walking hand in hand with the one who knows the end from the beginning. And obedience produces fruit not only in your life, but in the lives of those around you. Your obedience might be the reason someone else finds salvation. Your obedience might be the very answer to someone else's prayer. Think about the boy who gave Jesus his 5 loaves and 2 fish. It seems so small, so insignificant, but his obedience fed thousands. The little you place in God's hands in obedience becomes multiplied beyond anything you could imagine. That is the blessing of obedience. It ripples far beyond you. So do not wait until it makes sense. Do not wait until you feel ready. Step into obedience now, because when you obey, you align yourself with the power of heaven. And when heaven backs you, nothing on earth can stop you. The blessing of obedience is not always immediate, but it is always certain. God has never failed to honor those who honor him. God does not call you just to warn you, he calls you to awaken you. The message is not only about what you must turn away from, but about what you must step into. When he says you are chosen, when he presses on your heart with urgency, when he reminds you of the danger of ignoring his voice and the blessing of obedience, it is because he is preparing you for something greater. He is aligning you with a destiny you cannot yet see, but one that has already been written in heaven. And right now, in this moment, the choice you make determines whether you walk into it or watch it pass you by. Your destiny is not small. Your calling is not random. God did not place you on this earth to simply exist, to drift through days, to work and sleep, and then return to the dust unnoticed. He created you with intention. Every gift you have, every trial you faced, every season you survived has been shaping you for the purpose he set before you. Even the pain you endured has not been wasted. The tears you cried were watering seeds of strength inside you. The battles you fought were sharpening your faith. The loneliness you walked through was teaching you to hear his voice more clearly. All of it has been preparation for where he is taking you. Destiny is not about comfort, it is about calling. And calling requires courage. It means you will sometimes have to stand alone. It means you will often have to walk by faith and not by sight. It means you may be misunderstood, criticized, even rejected by people who cannot see what God has placed inside you. But if you are chosen, if you are truly his, then your destiny cannot be fulfilled by anyone else. No one can take your place. No one can carry your assignment. No one can shine the light that only you were created to shine. That is why the enemy fights you so hard, because he knows what is inside of you. But here is the truth: your destiny will not just happen by accident. It requires your response. It requires your surrender. It requires your obedience. You cannot walk into your future if you keep clinging to your past. You cannot step into your assignment if you keep holding on to your excuses. God is saying, the time is now. This is not a season to hesitate. This is not a season to delay. This is the moment to rise up and say, Lord, I am ready. Use me. Send me. Lead me into what you have prepared. And when you take that step, you will discover that God has already gone before you. He has already opened doors you could never open. He has already prepared provision you have not seen yet. He has already positioned people who will come into your life at just the right time. Destiny is not something you create, It is something you walk into when you align your steps with His. Every yes you give Him pulls you closer to the life He designed you to live. Some of you have been running from this. You have been telling yourself you are not worthy, that you are not ready, that you are too broken. But God does not choose you because you are perfect. He chooses you because His strength is perfected in your weakness. Others of you have been distracted, busy chasing after things that will never satisfy, while ignoring the very call that would fulfill you. But God, in His mercy, is reminding you again, your destiny is waiting, and it is greater than anything you are chasing in this world. Imagine standing before Him one day and hearing Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That is destiny fulfilled. That is the reward of a life lived in obedience. Not the applause of people, not the wealth of this world, not the fleeting pleasures that fade, but the eternal joy of knowing you completed the work He set before you. That is what this is all about. That is why the urgency is real, because eternity is closer than you think, and destiny is calling louder than your distractions. Do not waste this moment. Do not treat lightly what God has placed on your life. You are chosen. You are set apart. And your destiny is waiting for you to rise up and step into it.